Let us gather today to open our hearts to the boundless, nameless wonder that transcends all labels. We come to worship the mystery beyond definition, the creative energy that animates all existence, the love that encompasses us all without the need for a singular name. Let us enter this space with open minds and receptive spirits, ready to encounter the unnameable in the depths of our being. For our meditation inspiration today, I am sharing a poem by Leonard Cohen. He was a traditional Jew, but in midlife he spent about a decade as an ordained monk in a Zen monastery. This poem, written during that time, is a great description of the meditation experience. May it be yours. Here's the poem. The light came through the window straight from the sun above, and so inside my little room there plunged the rays of love. In streams of light I clearly saw the dust you seldom see, out of which the nameless makes a name for one like me. I'll try to say a little more. Love went on and on until it reached an open door, then love itself was gone. All busy in the sunlight, the flecks did float and dance, and I was tumbled up with them in formless circumstance. When I came back from where I'd been, my room, it looked the same, but there was nothing left between the nameless and the name. When I first came here to Live Oak a couple of years ago, I was a bit taken aback by the humanist element in this congregation, and I have been thinking a lot about it because I thought my beliefs were something else, and yet I fit in so perfectly here. So I'm going to share with you what's been going on in my head the last year and a half since I joined Live Oak. When I was a child, I didn't know the names of any plants. If I got the right picture, I can't tell. But I played among them in the vacant lot next to my house. I built little forts that were fun to sit in with my friends. I knew that tumbleweeds would stick together like Velcro and make a giant airy igloo. I knew that if I was playing hide and seek and hid in my father's carefully raked pile of leaves, I would stay warm. I knew from painful experience that a branch as big as my arm in an orange tree would hold my weight, but not if it had no bark. So I did know some plants quite well. They spoke to me of fun and their possible uses, but I didn't know their names. Fast forward 30 years. I've been reading books about Native American material culture. My childhood fantasies were reawakened, but the plants in my books were only mentioned by scientific name, so I still had no way to try out my newfound knowledge. In the late 80s, I started taking field classes to learn the local flora. The names were hooks, where I could hang information and experience. Yes, experience. Soon I had a group of like-minded friends who met regularly to make cordage, baskets, medicines, long matches, bows and arrows, shelters, drums, spears, atlatls, traps, acorn meal, and so on. Through this hands-on practice, where I actually embodied my knowledge by using my body to interact with the plants, I finally could say that I knew them. just as I had known them in childhood, hands-on. And now I also knew their names. As my knowing matured, however, familiarity then let me unname the plants one by one. I could go straight from seeing to using without having to invoke a name to know what I was doing. Just because you know the name of something does not mean you know it. And just because you know something doesn't mean you have to use its name to enjoy or think about it. But you do need to know something quite well first before you can unname it and be at one. As adults, the more we get out of our verbal minds and into our imaginations with the things of nature, the more our relationship with the earth grows. Again, names are hooks upon which we hang information and experience. We go from naming to deeper knowing to unnaming to an experience of oneness. And it's the same with people. In our culture, it's a matter of courtesy to put names and faces together as accurately as possible. Knowing someone's name doesn't mean you really know them, but it's a start. You've put up a hook. You've made a place for them in your consciousness. When I came first to Live Oak, I was overwhelmed with the sea of new faces and names. As with learning the plants, my motto was just learn one or two each week. So I started a list. The minute I got home, I added the names of those I had spoken with. Soon I added your contact information. Slowly I was getting a collection of things to hang on the hooks that were your name. But just because I had 4 or 5 bits of information hanging from your name hook didn't mean I knew you. It was only in our many small group interactions and quite a few one-on-one visits that I was getting to know some people better after we had shared our hearts to some extent. Doing things with some of you embodies our relationship. Now with many of you, I never look at your name tags. When I zoom in for a service, I can recognize you from the back. Just about everyone here. People are sacred. Getting to know each other is a gift. When love is the outcome, we become aware that we are profoundly interdependent and interconnected. Only then, as we become friends, can I then unname you, and hopefully even unname myself as well in the relationship. As you get to know me, and I don't have to keep telling my story. So together, each of us becomes conscious of our place in the oneness of the great mystery. I am slowly outgrowing the name for names here at Live Oak, but the relationships become more rich. I feel interconnected and at one. And so it is with relating within the sacred. I owned a graphic design studio when I was in my 30s and 40s. Religion was a big topic of good-natured discussion among my employees. It wasn't because I love to explore such questions with friends, which I do, but because among my 10 employees were a Jehovah's Witness, a devout Sufi, a Unitarian, a Catholic, an evangelical, and a nature enthusiast who later even moved to Antarctica, and me professing to be an atheist at the time. Our Sufi employee was the most devout, even doing the prayer at the appointed times right there beside his drafting table and taking his family on pilgrimage to Mecca for his vacation. He was a little older, and we all respected him. I confided to him that I just couldn't believe in God anymore, but wouldn't mind believing again if it could be made intellectually respectable. And so he told me a children's story. There were once 3 little fishes in the sea, and they were looked after by their grandfather, a very big and wrinkled fish. One day, they approached their grandfather and said, "What's this god we hear of? What's its name? Show this god to us." And the big old fish wisely said, "You have to find God for yourselves. Go now and seek." So they all went their separate ways. One little fish swam far, far away on a would-be hero's journey and encountered many dangers and much adventure, but nothing wonderful enough to be God. The second little fish had heard that God was above, so he swam fast, fast, fast towards the shining surface of the sea and broke forth with a mighty leap into the sunlight and air and fell back exhausted into the water. And the third little fish went to where there were many wise fishes who could teach her. And she listened carefully, but nothing all that special happened in spite of her urgent questions. So one day they all came back to the grandfather fish, who is now very old indeed. And he smiled and said, "So, show me God, what have you found?" And the 3 little fishes had to admit they had found nothing. Then the big fish opened his fins as wide as they would go. He gestured high and low. And he said, "Look around you. Show me anything that is not God." That's also how it is with the sacred. For me, it's the magic of the ordinary. Everything just being itself, all together, all at once. This story is how I ended up, some years later, finding a spiritual home in nature. Nature includes people too, although I was avoiding them while I was hiking around. Nothing is more special to me, not just the lives of the physical plants and animals and stones and people and oceans and soil, but the science inside that life, making it go, making it all stick together appropriately, everything being just exactly what it is, all together, all at once. We are born knowing everything is amazing. Psychology tells us that a young child does not differentiate itself from its environment. It is as if the child and the world around it are one. Everyone who has seen a child having a tantrum can relate to that, the fact that every experience for a child is all-encompassing. Those tantrums. Soon, though, books, families, and world religions give kids a plethora of names for the deity of the culture, the Tao, Allah, the unpronounceable name too sacred to speak, Wakantanka, Great Mystery, Gaia. In my family, God was the first name I heard. Along with that name, I was taught a lot of conflicting information. He lives in heaven. No, he is everywhere. He made everything. He loves me. He knows if I've been bad or good. Oh, wait, that's Santa Claus. He is jealous and fierce, warlike and angry, but forgiving. He fathered a son with a mortal woman. Oh, wait, maybe that was Zeus. He answers my prayers, but in my experience, usually with the word no or not now. I got lots of inconsistent stories and experience about this mega patriarch in the sky. As I grew up, went to college, and took theology classes, more and more stories and complications found their way to the God name hook in my consciousness. Finally, the hook was so heavy with concepts and ideas with bigness that it just fell off the wall. No more names, all the concepts, even the anthropomorphic archetype in a pile on the floor. So that I went around telling people I was an atheist for a decade while I deconstructed the entire spirituality of my youth, which actually had been very important to me. It was a bit scary. The consequences were dire. Of course, hellfire and brimstone come to mind. But that didn't scare me nearly as much as Jesus with his feelings hurt. But you know, deconstructing the path is quite different from abandoning it. I still sought the truth. I was still open. There was a growing feeling of rightness about this new exploration. Surprisingly, there was relief and a mature embracing of life that I had not experienced before. I absolutely knew that what was important for me would eventually become clear. But the journey would be the big thing, no pressure. For a time, the world was quite lackluster. I was depressed. Growing up is hard. Perhaps it's normal that we outgrow all the complication, that we unname God, so to speak, in order to have the freedom to discover the sacred for ourselves. It's not a matter of belief, it turns out, but a matter of awareness, of paying attention. After my divorce in 1990, I got serious about spiritual practice again, but it was not my old spiritual practice. Because of the story of the three little fishes, the numinous, that which shines for you, greeted me everywhere. The magic of the ordinary, moment-to-moment sustenance and good health in poverty, big dreams to guide me, powerful synchronicities. Most of all, there was this crazy compulsion to seek out experiences of oneness in nature. In fact, there was more and more sacredness in my life, more joy, more richness, more beauty, and rarely when I least expected it, even more actual power that caught me off guard from time to time as I was fostering an intention to serve. What replaced the names was embodied experience and more love. There was sacredness in everything that science teaches, all those wonderful processes, as well as the joying of little dogs running around in the park. From the glowing of leaves backlit by the sun to the miracle of my children, I was in relationship with the numinous, that which shines, both as part of myself and all around me as well, one continuous energy field. I had unnamed it, but I found I could embody it most vividly through service and a purpose beyond myself. Just as it is out in nature, the more we can avoid naming and analyzing with the verbal mind, the easier it is to encounter, to come into relationship with the numinous, whether it be in nature, in people, in ourselves, or in science, or even literature. Though the logical mind likes to shut it down, it is not illogical to seek this energy. Maybe the better word would be to cultivate this energy. In my young adulthood, I had unnamed God, but awe has never left me, and it has very little to do with the expectations I was first taught. Unnaming is a hallmark of a deepening relationship, whether it be with nature, people, yourself, science, or everything altogether all at once. The natural response, for me, is to embody the sacred oneness through service. Here are 3 things we all can do. First, learn to unname yourself. You can do this because you don't know anyone better. To quiet the analytical mind, try thinking in pictures, music, feelings, or not at all if you can. Learn to meditate, focus on your breath, go outside, join our Sangha. Come to Live Oak every Sunday because worship unnames us all together. Second, envision a better world in all its details and your part in bringing it forth. Don't see it like a TV show. See it unfolding through your own eyes as you are there doing the work that needs to be done. Usually only the first step is apparent, but as you embody it, the next step will present itself. This can continue as long as you live. No one is too old for a life of service. Third, cultivate an embodied daily practice that reminds you that you are profoundly interconnected and interdependent with everything. Such a practice can be anything that is done just for its own sake. Deeds of service are great, but maybe not if you do it for the attention and the thank yous. Yoga, walking, dancing, or even surfing can be such a practice, but perhaps not so much when they are grudgingly done for exercise or in hopes of meeting a new partner. Reading and journaling can be such a practice, but less so when they are done as research to prepare for a test or to teach a class. Gardening and housekeeping can even be such a practice, but not so much when you take the time to fantasize decorating schemes or are concerned with impressing someone. I speak from experience on these ways that it can all go wrong. Denial of sacred reality can be lonely, but unnaming can be the hallmark of a developing relationship, love growing. Practice unnaming and unvisioning. Cultivate an embodied spiritual practice. Look for opportunities to serve just for its own sake. After you have unnamed the sacred and are in relationship with your own nameless version of it, then it doesn't matter what you call it in conversation. You could call it sacredness. You could call it joy or beauty. You could call it science. You could call it Gaia. You could call it the self. You could even call it God.